Hello Apex Servers viewers, welcome back to our sessions MuleSoft for Salesforce developers, and this is our first session for MuleSoft error handling in Mule 4. So I will try to see if we can cover everything in 1 hour session, because we try to limit it to 1 hour. If not, we will make it 2 sessions. The aim is for you to understand things, so for that we are limiting the content of the of each session, limiting to 1 hour. So please, this is really important session. Error handling in Mule 4 is really important, and I will try to explain things in really easy manner with my 3 rules of error handler that I have created. Hope you will like this session. Again, we will see how much we can try, and we will see whether we will have session 2 or not. Without wasting time, our agenda is recap of previous session, and next we will start with error handling. And coming to the recap of previous session, we have seen the Salesforce integration part 2, where we have seen update, upsert. It's not upset. I'm not upset with that. So it's upsert. It's just a typo. Yep. So update, upsert, query, platform events, right? And today we will be going to discuss about error handling. Folks, this is really important in real-time projects, because success paths are always very easy. It's just one thing, but we have different kinds of errors that will be generated during our real-time projects. So to handle them, how to handle them is a big thing here. So most of the development work usually, success path takes less time, but handling the errors will take more time when you code it. All right. So, and Mule 4 does simplifies this error handling in Mule 4. Mule 3 was a bit typical, but you don't have to worry about Mule 3 anymore. So let's get started with error handling. So this is how we have in our Mule palette error handler. Okay, we see these 4 connectors basically: error handler, on error continue, on error propagate, and raise error. Okay, so basically what is an error, right? In general terms, error is nothing but whenever there is an exception that occurs, when an unexpected event happens while processing. You are processing, you are expecting something, but you got something else. That is an exception, right? That is an error. For example, you are trying to get a query, trying to query a Salesforce query, or database select statement you are trying to do, and you got some different error instead of getting a success response. So that is an exception, that is an error, right? And exception handling is nothing but how we are processing and responding to the exceptions when a computer program runs. Like, for example, there is a database connectivity issue. That is an error. You are trying to get information from database select statement, but eventually it ended up with connectivity issue of database. So how you are handling those kind of scenarios is nothing but exception handling or error handling. Okay, in Mule we can handle the message exception at different levels. Okay, again I will go by both slides and hands on, but these slides are really important because I try to simplify the things. So I told you, right, Mule exceptions can be handled at different levels. So the first one is at project level, your application level, using default error handler. If you are not providing any error handler specifically, by default Mule provides default error handler. Okay, and another one is at app level, but if you are trying to provide a customized global error handler, yes, then it will be handled at global error handler. If you're not providing anything, it will go to default error handler. And these two are at project level or application level. Then within application, we have different flows, isn't it? We have different flows. So at flow level, exception handling, we use 3 different kinds of connectors: on error continue, on error propagate, raise error. If you are good with these 3, on error continue, on error propagate, and raise error, your error handling is smooth. And you will, if you understand the concept of on error continue, on error propagate, and raise error, then you are good, trust me. So I tried to simplify those things. Okay, first we'll discuss about on error continue and on error propagate, and how it behaves at various levels. That is the challenge here. Okay, for that, if you try to do some hands-on, you don't need anyone to explain things, right? So I'll try to do that for you. And within flow or at process level, there is another scope called try scope, probably that I will show in coming sessions. So yep, and whenever there is an error occurred in a flow, This is really important, guys. Whenever there is an error occurred in a flow, an error object is created. Remember, we are talking about you remember when we are discussing about mule event. I told mule event, again I am reiterating, mule event is a combination of mule message plus variables plus, I told, like, though in the official documentation they don't show the error object and all, but mule event also contains error object only when error occurs. Okay, so whenever there is an error object is created, and it contains many properties. Within error object it contains many properties. For example, error dot description, error dot error type, etc. I will show you in the real time this thing. But error object, the whole object has many fields. One of them is description and the other one is error type. We have more. Now this point is very important. Error type is combination of a namespace and identifier. Example, for example, if you have some authentication error, then it will give http colon unauthorized. Okay, http colon unauthorized, and http colon unauthorized, and what is called as namespace and what is called as identifier, right? Namespace here is called http. This is just an example, but I am trying to show what is called as namespace, and identifier is called as unauthorized. So the red, whatever is highlighted in red text is namespace. That means the word left to the colon is a namespace and right is the identifier, and the combination of namespace and identifier is called as error type. This is very important, because in hands-on we will always talk about error type. And also whenever I say namespace, it is the first block, right? HTTP, for example, here. And whenever I say identifier, I will say unauthorized here, like for example, right? And Mule identifies based on the error type and then routes to respective blocks that are placed in the error handler. So the only thing that is that the error handling is message is being routed is based upon the error type. That's why the error type is really important. That's why I have elaborated this error type. All right, now we all know, when we discussed differences between flow, subflow and private flow, we came to know that subflow doesn't have error handling scope. Okay, then what happens? So it is just the flow and a private flow where you can place this on error propagate and on error continue inside the error handling block, because subflow cannot have error handling. Okay, so flow and private flow, if you keep there is a place where we can keep on error propagate and on error continue. That place is called error handling. You must have seen already in our previous sessions there is error handling area, but we never used it because we have error handling session. So there are only two connectors that we can place, on error propagate and on error continue. Either it is a propagate or continue, Mule executes all components within that block. This is important statement. Okay, either it is a on error propagate or on error continue. Whatever you keep inside error handling block, inside the on error propagate or on error continue, it executes all the components. If you have 3 loggers in the error handling, it will execute all 3 loggers. Okay, remember, the error will route to the error handling only if it identifies that error type of that error is handled, which means if you are not if it doesn't identify the error type, then it will go to default error handling. If you are not mentioning the type of error is not mentioned in your error handler block, then it will go to default error handling. All right, so this, whenever I am highlighting with some different text color, right, red or green or any other color, those are important points, because guys, when it comes to certification exams, you will be getting probably more than 5 to 7 questions on error handling. So if you follow my rules, it will be very easy for you to crack the examination, or for that matters even in your real-time projects. Okay, how to identify the error types? How to do that? Do you have to do any coding and all? No. MuleSoft is very much Mule 4 has like this excellent feature of identifying the types of errors that can occur within the flow by just looking at what kind of connectors that are placed in that flow, right? How? If you see this screenshot, in my flow, you can see different connectors. There is HTTP requester connector, there is database connector, right? when you drag and drop something on error propagate or on error continue, and when you click on search, automatically here on the screen it is showing what kind of errors that it can occur. You can see database bad syntax, database connectivity, or HTTP bad request. Based on the connectors, MuleSoft itself is very smart enough to detect the kind of errors that it can produce. You don't have to search for it. All right. So now comes the actual fun. 3 rules of understanding error handling. These are the rules. Okay, these are the rules just framed by me, and this is just to make you understand this error handling concept more easier. Okay, if you follow these rules, yes, you can understand almost 95%, and the rest 5%, if you do your hands-on, you can get it. All right. And this is not official, these rules are not officially created by MuleSoft, it is just by me. So okay, any mistakes happens, please apologize. All right. So let's go with the 3 rules to understand, and then we will go with the hands-on. Rule 1. Okay, I keep insisting rule 1, rule 2, rule 3 in every scenario. I will show you in the form of pictures. Okay, then we will go in the real-time hands-on part. Rule 1 is very simple. See if anything is present in the error handling. Okay, let me go quickly to my Anypoint Studio. I will try to create a new project. File, new Mule project. Error handling. Let me create a new project here. We'll go step by step. Okay, let me drag a flow, for example, here. So this is error handling, whatever you are seeing here, right? This block is error handling. You must have seen in many times during our hands-on session. So error handling, that's what my first point says, like see if anything is present in the error handling. Okay, if there are on error propagate and on error continue blocks, see that if that particular error type is handled. That is our next point. Okay, first see if there is anything present in the error handling. Second, even if there are any on error propagate or on error continue blocks, you should see if that particular error type is handled. Okay, even if it is on error propagate or on error continue is present, but that error type has to be handled. Okay, if not, in above 2 scenarios, first of all, if there is nothing present, or even if on error propagate and continue are present but the error type is not handled, in these 2 scenarios, Mule will use default error handling. Mule will use default error handling. And if your flow is not called by any other flow, that means, for example, when it comes to subflow or private flow, isn't it? If your flow is not called, see, first things, someone will call your API. When it comes to HTTP, when it comes to APIs, someone will be calling your APIs. In all the hands-on sessions, what we have done, we have called using Postman, correct? Let's consider Postman tool as the caller. Okay, if your flow and you're calling HTTP listener, okay, HTTP listener go with flow reference, and flow reference will take you to multiple subflows and all, right? So those private flows or subflows, if your flow is not called by any other flow, then it will display default value that is set in error response and gives status code as 500 bad. Default if nothing is set manually. I will show you this in our real-time scenario, what is this error response and everything. Okay, but if your flow is called by any other flow, then it will raise that error to the calling flow. Whoever is calling you, it will be raised to that particular flow. We will see in the hands-on, because this is just the theoretical part, you won't be understand. Excuse me. All right, so rule 1 clear. So rule 2, very simple. If some error handling is present in that particular flow and error type is handled, that means it is a S condition for rule 1. Okay, what happens to that? Then check whether it is on error continue or on error propagate. That is very important. Okay, so on error continue and on error propagate, check whether it is on error continue or on error propagate. In both the cases, Mule will execute all the components within that block. Okay, Mule will execute all the components within that block. Next, follow the rule 3, which is very important and very simple. Okay, so rule 2 is if some error handling is present or not in that particular flow and error type is handled, yes condition for rule 1, and then check whether it is on error continue or propagate, and then it will execute all the components within those blocks. Next is follow the rule 3. Rule 3 is if the error is handled using on error propagate, it will raise an error back to the calling flow. Okay, if the error is handled using propagate name itself is propagating again to the calling flow. If the error is handled using on error continue, it will not raise an error to back to the calling flow. Rather, it continues to the next processor after the flow reference and continues further. But it will not continue to the other process within the flow where the error is handled. This is very important and I will show you in the real time case. Right? Again, continuation to rule 3. Suppose you have only one single flow. Okay, there is only one single flow, and then on error propagate and on error continue behaves the same way because there is no caller flow, right? And instead on error continue gives 200 and on error propagate gives 500 status. Guys, remember on error continue, the name itself saying that on error and continue. That means you know that there is an error, but you still want to continue and give a success response. Because as I said, even if it's on error continue, it will not go to the next processor within the same flow when the error is handled. All right. Remember, this point is really important. On error continue will continue only to the next processor of the calling flow, but not on the same flow. Okay. Let's see an example very quickly. Imagine that this is a flow. Okay, imagine that this is a flow. For example, let's talk about weather API that we used right earlier to call using HTTP requester. So imagine that you have a listener here, you have a set variable, then HTTP requester and some other connectors after that. Okay, so in this case we will identify. Okay, so imagine that you got a connectivity issue. That's why I'm on my right side. If you see, when you are in a debug mode, that error is nothing but the error object, and within error object you can see multiple description, error type, etc. Now here on my screen you can see that error type is HTTP connectivity. Okay, HTTP connectivity, right? So HTTP connectivity is the error now, that is the error type, and HTTP is the namespace and connectivity is the identifier. Now let's go with the rule 1. Rule 1 is see if something is present in our error handling. Yes, something is present, that is on error continue. Okay, not only that, you have to also check like whether that particular type is handled or not. Here our type is HTTP connectivity which we got, but whatever is coded here, right, that is HTTP not found, right? This is HTTP connectivity, the error which we got, and whatever we have coded is HTTP not found. So our rule 1 is breaking. So what will happen? Rule 1, rule lint is breaking. When rule 1 is a no, then what we said, like it will go to default error handler and it will show whatever is there in whatever is set in the HTTP listener error response. So this will give default error message. Okay, default error message with 500 status. All right, this is failing at rule 1 itself, right? Let's see example 2. Now this is my, okay, in all these times please consider that we are getting HTTP connectivity issue only. Okay, all the times we are using the same for this example. All right, now rule 1, see if anything is present in error handling. Yes, it is present. On error continue. See whether the error type is handled. Here, yes, it is handled because the type is HTTP connectivity. Rule 1 is done. Very good. Next, what is rule 2? What is rule 2? See whether it is on error continue or on error propagate. In our case, it is on error continue. Okay. What I have said, if it is only a single flow, here you have a single flow. You don't have any flow reference or nothing, right? It will just call it. Okay. So on error continue. Yes. What will happen? Okay. On error continue will continue. First, it will try to execute all the components within the error handling block. So what is the component that is there in error handling block? Transform message. Within on error continue, you see transform message, and the value that is set in the transform message is error handled in main flow. So rule 3, who is calling this flow? It's nothing, it is just the listener. Probably it is called by the postman, right, or someone else. So no, it is not being called by any other flow. So what will happen? This part, whatever is this part, whatever part is there after this HTTP requester, it will not execute. That's what I told. Like in a on error continue, it will execute only to the next processor by the calling flow, not on the same flow. So what will happen? It will go to HTTP request. There is an error that is occurred, that is HTTP connectivity issue. Then it will go to error handling. There is HTTP connectivity. There is a transfer message, and that will execute this, and then it will not execute all three blocks. So, and I told you, right, if it is on error continue, it will give 200, okay, and whatever payload is the latest one, that it will print. Here in our case, the latest payload value is error handled in main flow, that is there in error handling. Okay, so the output would be, the payload will be error handling in main flow with 200 status. Got it? Coming to error handling example 3. So here, see, we have two different flows. This is now interesting. This is more interesting, right? We have two different flows. The first one is the main flow because we have a listener. Okay. So in this scenario, we are getting an error in our private flow. The below one is a private flow because it doesn't have a source, and this private flow is being called by the flow reference. Now please imagine that this rule 1, rule 2, rule 3 will apply to each flow. Okay, you have to do this rule 1, rule 2, rule 3 in the each flow. I will show you in the hands-on, but try to understand the rules here. So very first rule, as usual, the error is occurring in the private flow. Okay, so first rule is whether this particular error is handled. First of all, is there anything in the error handling? Yes, on error propagate is there this time, and is the error type handled? If the type is any, that means the type is handled, the error is handled, it because any type of error can be accepted. Yes, it is handled. Then what it will do, it will execute. Rule 1 is completed. Rule 2 is, irrespective of error propagate or error continue, it will execute all the components which are present in the inside the error propagate or error continue, which means here in our case, the transform message whatever is there in here, the payload value is set to error handled in private flow 1. Okay, now what is the next step? Rule 2, I told you this is error propagate, it will execute. Next, rule 3, check whether this particular flow is being called by any other flow. Yes, here you can see with using this flow reference, this is calling that one. Okay, now our latest payload is error handled in private flow 1, and our rule 3, I told, if it is on error propagate, it will not go to the very next connector of here, like in our private flow, it will not go to the calling private flow or something. It will raise an error to the calling flow. Again, you have to start rule 1, rule 2, rule 3 for this calling flow. Rule 1, again, on error continue. Yes, okay, on error continue is there, and error type is HTTP connectivity. Yes, it is handled. So rule 1 is good. Rule 2, it will execute all the components within that on error continue now, so which is like error handled in main flow. So now the previous payload was error handled in private flow 1. Now the error handled in main flow will be the latest one. And see, again rule 3, check if this particular flow is being called by any other flow. Here no one is calling because this is the main flow, so it will not go to this part, whatever is there, this success in main flow set payload, it will never execute this part. And our latest value, as it is on error continue, the status code will be 200, and the latest payload value will be error handled in main flow. All right, so these are the three simple examples that you can three simple rules that you can use to understand the concept of on error propagate and on error continue, and we will be going to see hands-on soon. Let's get back to our hands-on part. Let's get our hands dirty. So far you have seen these three rules on slides, and we have seen how to go it. So let me keep this slide first. Let's go with the first example so that you will understand in a better way. So for that, to replicate the same thing, please understand that I am dragging and dropping the listener here, and I keep saying like, right, whenever default error messages or whatever is set in the error response. So in the listener, when you create a configuration, there is a tab. This is by default, you will see, you can keep like error 1 for now. Okay, the path as error 1. There is a field called responses. So this tab is really important, guys. whatever is set in the error response, there are two response. This is the success response and this is the failure response. So the listener will determine what needs to be passed to the caller. Okay, here by default the response is payload, so whatever payload is set at the last point for the success scenarios, it will give that payload. And can you see here in the error response, what is the body here? It is the error description and output text plain, which means any error, when there is an error that is occurred, okay, and if it is on error propagate, then it will go into this section, and whatever you are setting inside the body, that will be the base. So here whenever there is on error propagate, it is error dot description that it will display. And if it is on error continue, it will always, you are saying like on error continue, which means even if there is an error, just continue and consider it as success. So it will go into this part. So this response tab is really important. All right, so listener, I have dragged and dropped what is their set variable. This is not really important, but just to show that there are some connectors. So like fruit, I'll say apple, just this is for demo purpose. And I will keep http requester. Okay, http requester. Now in this case I need to create an error, right? I need to create an error. So what I will do, I'll just create a new configuration and give some dummy URL, like xyz.gdris.com, so that it will give a connectivity issue, right? And then what, a transform message here. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I will keep like application JSON success. And in your real-time certification exam and all, they will not show you each and every connector, right? Because the code is too long. So whatever they are naming it here, right, whatever they are naming it here, you should consider that, okay, this is the part which was set here, okay, by looking at this display name. Same with set variable also. Whenever you see in any certification exam, if you see something like display name as apple, because they won't show you all these screens, so when you see apple here, that means you need to consider that set variable is the value that is set in the set variable is apple. All right, so yep, that is done. And keep a logger if you want. At the end, put a logger like payload. All right, so now first, even before keeping anything here in error handling, let's debug and see what it will give. Okay, I'll keep a debugger point here. Let's go step by step. No hurries in learning this error handling. Take your time, but you have to do hands-on practice. Okay, in this, if you try to understand these 3 rules, it will be very easy for you. During the hands-on, I will try to show that. Okay, don't worry about it. We'll go step by step. It will be easy. Then we can build multiple flows and see how it behaves accordingly. Alright, my application is deployed now. Now what I'll do is, let me put it here. Alright, so error 1, this is the flow name. Let me send the request here. The request is coming here. Go next. Let's wait till the error is created. Okay, yes, the error is created. Immediately error object is created. This is what I have shown you in this example, right? Whenever there is an error, it will create a error object, right? So error object is created, and error object has multiple fields like description, detailed description, error type, which is one of them. So error type, you can see identifier and namespace. Namespace is HTTP and identifier is the connectivity. This one is really important for us to, I told you, right, in here, in one of them. So remember, the error will continue to error handling only if it identifies the error type of that handler. Okay, now rule 1 is see if something is present. Okay, rule 1 itself is failing. there is nothing present in the error handler. That's what our rule 1, right? Where is our rule 1? See if anything is present. If not, then Mule will use default error handling. That's why when it is default error handling, it will print whatever you are setting in the responses. Okay, in the error response, it will go to output text plain error dot description. So in our case, when error is raised, what is error? This is error. Go to x plus y. What is error dot description? You don't have to type every time here, because you can see error dot description is http get on blah 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 blah, the URI provided must contain a scheme, whatever is there, right? So that description is nothing but this one. So this it will print, and the status code will be 500. All right, status code will be 500. So because rule 1 is failing, it will go to default error handler. I told you, right? This is what error dot description, and this is 500 status. So for everything you should be seeing both for everything you should be seeing both what do you say, the the status code and payload. That is really important. All right, next thing, what's next? This is one scenario. Now what if you keep on error propagate? Okay, on error propagate, there is on error propagate, you can search it, drag and drop. I told you, right, whenever you are dragging and dropping, if you click on this search button, it will immediately show you a list of errors that these connectors can generate. Because I am using HTTP requester in my component, you can see different types of errors that are handled, right? So now instead of HTTP, so if you click HTTP connectivity, it will come here. Okay, but I don't want to use that one now. I wanted to use different, because I wanted to show you something. Transform message, drag and drop, and keep something like error occurred in main flow. This is the payload that I wanted to set. Okay, error occurred in main flow. So what it will happen, we will see whether it will go inside this on error propagate or not. We will see. So see whether it is deployed or not. Yes, it is deployed. Let's run it again. So rule 1, again rule 1, this rule applies when there is an error. Yes, rule 1, see if anything is present here in the error handling. Yes, it is present, but there is another condition I told. See if that particular type is handled, the error type is handled, this one, this point. So what is the error type that you got? HTTP connectivity. But what you are coding here, bad request, correct? Right? So it will not go inside this. Still rule 1 is failing. That's why it will not come here. It will execute and give the same issue here. Now see the drama. I will try to change this bad request to there is no need for me to change. I can just add connectivity also. Okay, now you can see HTTP connectivity is being handled here. Let me save it and let me run it. Right, the application is started. Send the request again. Now this type, rule 1 is see if anything is present in the error handling. Yes, on error propagate is present. Rule 2 is see if that within rule 1 you see whether that particular error type is handled. Here it is HTTP connectivity, and in the type you are handling HTTP connectivity. Now if you go, it will come into this block. Okay, this is how error is handled. There is an error occurred and it is getting handled in this transform message. Okay, what is rule 2? Irrespective of on error propagate or continue, it will execute all the components within this block. So there is only one component, so it will So currently this will change into the payload. Okay, whatever payload is there here, okay, you think it will print this one. Okay, but we will see what it is doing. It is still printing the error dot description. Why? I told you, right? Whatever is there in the listener responses tab, whatever you are setting here in the error responses, error dot description is the body, right? That will only display. Okay, but whenever you generate these flows using raml, by default it will show payload. So now what I am doing, I am trying to modify this error response body to payload, so that it will print whatever the latest payload is there. It will print error occurred in main flow. So this is really important. Whenever someone asks you in the interview questions or certification exam, you have to be cautious what is set in the responses tab here. That is more important. Now I am setting both error and success payload to payload. Now you see the magic. Send it. Okay, let me resume this first, and I wanted to add one more connector into my on error propagate, so that I wanted to show you that it will execute all the components within this logger. Okay, all right, so this is one. Now it is deployed. Let me send the request again. There is an error, there will be an error that is occurred. Okay, rule 1, see if anything is present. Yes, it is present, and the type is handled because HTTP connectivity is there, and it will execute all the components here. Two components it will execute. And what is the latest payload now? Error occurred in main flow. Now according to our rules, rule 3, if it is on error propagate, rule 3 is if it is on error propagate, it will if this flow is being called by any other flow, it will raise an error to the calling flow. But in this case, is there anyone who is calling our flow using flow reference? No, it is just the postman. So it will raise this error to this postman itself. So it will not execute this transfer message and this logger. All right, so if you go to next, it is raising an error to this caller. So you can see now error occurred in main flow with 500 status. All right, and what happens if we use on error continue? On error continue here, you can add multiple on error propagates and continue, but for now I don't want to confuse you with all this. I can show you in the next session what happens if we have two things in one point. Now I am using on error continue. Remember guys, one more thing, if you are typing like this and selecting HTTP connectivity, or if you are not giving anything, by default it will accept all the conditions here. Okay, if you are not defining anything in your on error continue, if you are not defining anything in the type, which means it by default it accepts all kind of errors. All right, so let me run now. This is on error continue scenario. Next, error is raised. Rule 1, see if there is anything in the error handling block. Yes, it is there, so it will go irrespective of continue or propagate. First, don't forget about this. It will execute all the components within that error handling block. This done. Now check whether it is on error continue or on error propagate. It is on error continue. On error continue, I told it behaves the same way like propagate. It will never go to the next message of the calling flow. Okay, of the same flow, it will go to the calling flow, right? So this time this success and this logger will not execute. Rather, as you said that this on error continue you are considering as a success, it will go to the payload body here in the listener responses tab. It will go here, and status code is nothing, so it will give 200. Okay, that is the difference between on error propagate and on error continue. Now what I will do is I will try to give you one more example by keeping them in two different flows. What will happen when it is on error continue and on error propagate? Let me drag and drop this request separately. Okay, let me put a flow. Okay, drag and drop this request here, HTTP requester. You can drag and drop here and call this flow using on error propagate. So first what I will do, I will keep this everything. Let me keep this on error continue here. We can do some drama over here. So I am going to use this flow reference to call this private flow, this one. Okay, now what will happen here in this error handling, let me put transform message here. Okay, and then on error propagate over here. Okay, and just copy another transform message here and just keep error occurred in private flow. Okay, and keep another logger. I am just keeping multiple connectors so that you can understand how it goes from one place to another. Okay, please do hands-on along with me. Okay, save it and it will redeploy, and now we will see how it behaves when there are in two sides. Okay, okay, the application is deployed now. Now let me run this. So step 1, okay, now we are using flow reference. It will go to this flow. Okay, error occurred. Same, follow rule 1, rule 2, rule 3 for this private flow. Rule 1, see if anything is present here. Yes, it is present. Whether the error type is handled or not, as we are not mentioning anything, it will go inside, because we are not mentioning any error type, it will consider as any. Okay, now next thing is execute all the components here and this. What is the latest payload now? Error occurred in private flow. What is rule 3? If it is on error propagate and if this flow is called by any other flow, that's what I have written here in rule 3, right? Okay, it will raise an error back, raise as an error back to the calling flow. Now your question should come whether it will go to this transfer message or not. No, it will not go here. Okay, it will go to the calling flow. So it will raise as an error to the flow reference. So if you see next, now it is going to flow reference. Now you should apply all these 3 rules again, because you can see an error here and see the error type. Error type is still HTTP connectivity, right? Now rule 1, again see if anything is present here or not. Yes, it is present. On error continue. See whether error type is handled or not. As we didn't mention anything, by default you should consider that it is handled, so it will go inside this. You will see error occurred in main flow. You will execute this. Again, what is the third rule? Whether this particular flow is being called by any other flow. No, this is listener, so this is the main flow. Now this is being called by postman, so it will go. This is on error continue, so it will consider as success 200. As it is not called by any other flow, it will not execute this one, and it will not execute in the same flow. If this was on error continue, it would have come here. Okay, so go next. You can see error occurred in main flow. Clear everyone? 200 and error occurred in main flow. This is how it behaves when you are calling using flow reference, how it will raise to the calling flows. Let me give some perfect value for this as well. Success in private flow. Okay, now tell me, if I keep on error continue here, okay, if I am keeping on error continue here and removing the on error propagate, do you think that when it raise an error, will it raise an error to the calling flow and it will execute here or not? We will see. Okay, once it is deployed, we can see it is deployed. Now see the fun. So if you understand these 3 rules again and again, it is very simple, just like it's like a riddle. Okay, so let's see whether, so going to flow reference, it is having a error. That error type is HTTP connectivity. Rule 1, see if anything is present and error type is handled. Yes, something is present, so it will go inside, execute all the components. As it is on error continue, it will not go to the next connector of the same flow. This is I am trying to insist. Everyone, please try to understand. If it is on error continue, it will not go to the next connector of the same flow. Rather, it will go to the next connector of the calling flow. This one. That is what we have mentioned in on error continue. It will not raise an error back to the calling flow, but it will continue the next processor after the flow reference and continue to further process it. Okay, but it will not continue to the other process in the same flow where the error is handled, right? Which what I'm trying to say here is, it will never go into this transfer message. No matter what, if you have 100 connectors after HTTP requester, it will never go here. Rather, it will go to the calling flow. It will not raise an error because you are saying like error occurred, it is handled. So it will consider that whatever block you have done in the private block, it will consider as the success. And see where it is going. It is going to the, this is what I mentioned. Okay, it will continue to the next processor. Okay, it will continue to the next processor of the flow after the flow reference, because what is happening here is you are saying there is an error occurred, but you handled it already and saying that it is success, so it is going to this place. It will now not go into this on error continue block because you are not raising it as an error. Okay, no rule 1, rule 2, rule 3 here. It is going as if nothing happened. This flow reference behaves like as if nothing happens here because it is on error continue. Smoothly it will execute the next processor and you will get success 200. Clear? Very simple. Even if you keep on error continue or on error propagate, doesn't matter. Everyone, so this is how you can apply rule 1, rule 2, rule 3 of error handling, and these are the small examples that I have tried to show you here. As we are running out of time, I would like you to practice all these 3 scenarios, and next scenario we will try to learn about raise error. Okay, this is typical topic, important topic. Try to understand, 2 more hands on, it will be very easy. Thank you everyone, and see you in our next session.